Listen closely, my friends. Somewhere on this planet, before the first ray of sunlight touches the earth, a man is already changing his destiny. While the rest of the world is still asleep, he has already won the first battle no one will ever see. No applause, no audience, no reward. Just one silent decision made in the darkness that will quietly shape every hour that follows. The terrifying part is this. That man could have been you every single morning. But somewhere along the way, comfort became stronger than purpose, and the life you were meant to build was traded for another 5 minutes of sleep. Marcus Aurelius once ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet every morning he faced an enemy far more dangerous than invading armies. It wasn't war, it wasn't betrayal, it wasn't death. It was the version of himself that wanted to choose comfort over discipline. Because the greatest empire you will ever rule is not built from cities or armies. It is built from the first decision you make after opening your eyes. Win that decision, and you begin to rule your life. Lose it, and the world will gladly rule it for you. This is not another morning routine. It is not motivation, and it is certainly not productivity advice. What you are about to hear is a collection of 12 ancient Stoic principles that have survived more than 2,000 years because they work. Each principle is designed to reshape the way you think before the world has the chance to think for you. By the end of this journey, you will know how to master your first thoughts, strengthen your discipline, protect your peace, silence unnecessary fear, and build a mind that remains calm even when life becomes chaotic. These are not ideas to admire. They are disciplines to live by. For the next hour, you are not simply watching a video. You are standing at the entrance of a gate that opens only once every single day. On one side stands the person you have always been, repeating the same habits, the same excuses, and the same mornings. On the other side waits the person you could become, calmer, stronger, disciplined, and impossible to shake. The distance between those two people is not measured in years. It is measured by 12 decisions, made before the world has the chance to make them for you. Stay with me until the very end, because Principle 9 is the one almost everyone ignores. And it is also the reason most people remain trapped in the same life for decades. If you truly apply these 12 Stoic principles every morning, 90 days from now, you will not simply have better habits. You will become someone your past self would barely recognize. So take one deep breath, leave yesterday behind, and step into the first battle of the day. This is where your new life begins. Principle 1. Own the first 60 seconds. Every morning before the sun rises, a war begins. It is invisible. No one hears it. No one applauds the person who wins it. Yet this silent battle decides more about your future than almost any decision you will make for the rest of the day. The battlefield is not your bedroom. It is the first 60 seconds after your eyes open, and the frightening truth is this. Most people lose that battle before they even leave their bed. Marcus Aurelius understood something that modern people have forgotten. When he struggled to rise before dawn, he reminded himself that he had been born to do the work of a human being, not to remain where comfort felt safe. He knew that the first victory of the day was never against an enemy outside the walls of Rome. It was against the voice inside him whispering, "Stay where you are, you can begin tomorrow." That voice has survived for 2,000 years, and this morning it is speaking to you as well. Imagine your mind as the gate of an ancient fortress just before sunrise. For a few precious moments, the gates stand open, waiting for the first visitor. If discipline enters first, everything that follows becomes easier to command. But if fear, distraction, comfort, or the endless noise of the world walks through that gate before you do, they will quietly rule your thoughts for the rest of the day. Most people never realize they surrendered their kingdom before breakfast. This is why the Stoics guarded their mornings with almost sacred discipline. They understood that whoever controls your first thought will eventually influence your first action, your first decision, your first emotion, and often the entire direction of your day. A weak beginning rarely creates a powerful ending. Every extraordinary life is built on ordinary mornings that were protected with extraordinary discipline. Tomorrow morning, before your hand reaches for your phone, before yesterday's worries return, before the world reminds you of everything it wants from you, pause for just a few seconds and ask yourself one question. Who will rule my mind today? Not my habits, not my fear, not my comfort, me. Let those words become the first command your mind hears every single morning. Because here is the truth that changes everything. Your future is not created by one massive decision made once in a lifetime. It is created by the first 60 seconds you either own or surrender every single day. Win those 60 seconds long enough, and one morning you will wake up living a life that once felt impossible. Lose them, and years can disappear without anything ever truly changing. So beginning tomorrow, guard your first minute the way a king guards the gates of his kingdom. Protect it from distraction, protect it from excuses, protect it from comfort. Because the man who owns the first 60 seconds does not simply control his morning. Eventually, he controls his entire life. Principle 2. Muster the silence before the world speaks. Before the world tells you who to become, there is one brief moment when your mind still belongs entirely to you. It happens before the notifications arrive, before the headlines steal your attention, before another person's opinion quietly becomes louder than your own voice. Most people never notice that moment. They surrender it without a fight, and then spend the rest of the day wondering why they feel anxious, distracted, and emotionally exhausted. They think the world stole their peace. The truth is, they handed it away before breakfast. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that people search for peace in mountains, by the sea, and in distant places, never realizing that the quietest place they will ever find is already within their own mind. But there is a condition. That inner sanctuary only reveals itself to the person who is willing to sit in silence long enough to hear it. The modern world fears silence because silence exposes the truths that noise keeps hidden. Imagine a lake after a violent storm. The water is dark, restless, and impossible to see through. Throw another stone into it, and the surface becomes even more chaotic. But leave it untouched, just for a little while, and something remarkable happens. The waves begin to disappear. The mud settles to the bottom. The reflection becomes perfectly clear without anyone forcing it to happen. Your mind follows the exact same law. It does not become clear by consuming more information. It becomes clear when you finally stop disturbing it. That is why the strongest people in history never began their mornings with noise. They began with stillness. They understood that every notification, every opinion, every headline, and every distraction is a vote competing for control of your attention. And attention is not just another resource. It is your life itself. Whatever owns your attention eventually owns your future. Tomorrow morning, before you allow the world to speak to you, spend just 10 minutes in complete silence. No music, no scrolling, no podcast, no conversation. Sit with nothing except your own breathing and your own thoughts. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will beg you to escape. It will remind you of unfinished conversations, old regrets, imaginary disasters, and meaningless distractions. Do not fight those thoughts. Simply watch them pass like clouds crossing the sky. Every cloud that leaves without your permission makes you stronger than the one before. Here is the secret almost nobody tells you. Peace is not something you find after your problems disappear. Peace is the weapon that allows you to face your problems without becoming one of them. The people who seem impossible to shake are not living easier lives than you. They have simply mastered something most people never practice. They learned to remain silent long enough for wisdom to speak louder than fear. So before the world asks for your attention tomorrow morning, ask yourself a far more important question. Can I sit alone with my own mind without trying to escape it? Because the person who conquers silence no longer needs the world's approval to feel complete. And once you reach that point, you become extraordinarily difficult to manipulate, impossible to distract, and almost impossible to defeat. Principle 3. Make discomfort your ally. There is one reason most people never become extraordinary, and it has nothing to do with intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It is because every morning they unconsciously worship the same invisible master, comfort. Comfort tells them to sleep a little longer, avoid the difficult conversation, postpone the hard decision, and wait for the perfect moment that never arrives. The tragedy is that comfort never destroys your life all at once. It steals it one easy choice at a time, until one day you wake up living a life you never intended to create. Seneca understood this better than almost anyone. Although he possessed enormous wealth, he regularly chose voluntary discomfort. He wore simple clothes, ate plain meals, and lived as though everything he owned had already been taken away, not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he refused to let comfort become something he depended on. He knew a terrifying truth. The moment your happiness depends on comfort, your freedom has already disappeared. Picture an eagle raised inside a golden cage. It has food every day. It is protected from every storm. It never feels hunger, cold, or danger. Yet the one thing it slowly loses is the very reason it was created, the ability to fly. Comfort often looks like safety, but when it lasts too long, it quietly becomes a prison. The bars are invisible, which is why almost nobody notices them until years have passed. The Stoics believed that voluntary hardship was not punishment, it was preparation. Every difficult choice you make on purpose today weakens the power that fear holds over you tomorrow. A cold shower is no longer just cold water. It becomes proof that your body does not command your mind. Waking up without pressing snooze is no longer about sleep. It becomes evidence that your discipline speaks louder than your emotions. Every small act of discomfort is another vote for the person you are becoming. Tomorrow morning, choose one difficult thing before life chooses one for you. Walk when driving would be easier. Train when your body begs for rest. Finish the task you have been avoiding instead of escaping into distraction. Your goal is not to suffer. Your goal is to remind yourself that you are stronger than the voice that keeps negotiating with comfort. Every time you win that private argument, you become a little more dangerous to every obstacle that will ever stand in your way. Here is the paradox almost nobody understands. The more you chase comfort, the weaker you become. The more willingly you embrace controlled discomfort, the calmer, stronger, and more resilient your mind becomes. That is why the strongest people are rarely the ones with the easiest lives. They are the ones who stopped asking, "How can I avoid difficulty?" and started asking, "What is this difficulty trying to build inside me?" One day, life will test you without asking for permission. It will bring loss, failure, rejection, betrayal, or uncertainty. On that day, you will not rise to the level of your hopes. You will fall to the level of your daily discipline. That is why every small discomfort you embrace this morning is quietly preparing you for a battle you cannot yet see. And when that battle finally arrives, you will realize something extraordinary. The thing you once feared was the very thing that made you unbreakable. Principle 4. Stop borrowing tomorrow's pain. Every sunrise brings two invisible burdens. One is real. The other exists only inside your imagination. The tragedy is that most people spend far more energy carrying the second one. Before anything has gone wrong, they have already lived through failure. Before the conversation has happened, they have already been rejected. Before the challenge has arrived, they have already convinced themselves they cannot survive it. They are not living today. They are serving a sentence inside a future that does not even exist. The Stoics understood that fear is rarely created by reality. It is created by imagination left without discipline. Seneca once observed that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. Think about that for a moment. The greatest thief of peace is often not the problem itself. It is the endless movie your mind keeps playing before the problem has even arrived. Every replay drains your strength, yet none of it changes the outcome. Imagine a traveler carrying a heavy backpack across a mountain. Halfway through the journey, someone asks what is inside. He opens it and finds that most of the weight is made of stones he packed himself, convinced he might need them one day. That is exactly how anxiety works. Every what if becomes another stone. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if everything falls apart? Soon the climb feels impossible, not because the mountain is too steep, but because you are carrying a future that was never yours to carry. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to return to one simple truth whenever fear appeared. This moment is enough, not tomorrow, not next year. This breath, this decision, this step. He knew that the present is the only place where action is possible. The past cannot be changed. The future cannot be controlled. But this moment is where character is forged. Every second your mind abandons the present, it also abandons the only place where your strength actually exists. Tomorrow morning, when your mind begins predicting disasters that have not happened, stop for a single moment and ask yourself, is this happening right now, or is it only happening inside my head? If the answer is no, let it go. Bring your attention back to the one thing you can actually influence: the next breath, the next decision, the next action. Great lives are never built by solving imaginary problems. They are built by mastering the reality directly in front of you. Here is what separates the unshakable from everyone else. They do not possess fewer fears. They simply refuse to let fear make decisions before reality has spoken. While others are exhausting themselves fighting battles that exist only in their imagination, they conserve their energy for the battles that are actually real. That is why they appear calm when everyone else is panicking. They are living in today, while everyone around them is trapped inside a tomorrow that may never arrive. Remember this, because it may be the most liberating truth you hear today. Life has never asked you to carry tomorrow's pain before tomorrow comes. It has only asked you to be fully present for the moment, standing in front of you. The day you stop borrowing suffering from the future is the day your mind becomes lighter, your decisions become clearer, and your spirit becomes almost impossible to break. That is not optimism. That is Stoicism in its purest form. Principle 5. Guard your attention like a kingdom. There is something more valuable than your money, your time, or even your talent. It is your attention, because whatever owns your attention eventually shapes your thoughts, your decisions, your habits, and finally your entire identity. Most people believe they are making choices throughout the day. The Stoics would argue something far more unsettling, that many of those choices were already made the moment they allowed the wrong things to capture their attention. Imagine an ancient kingdom preparing for war. The enemy does not always attack the walls first. A wise enemy attacks the gates. Once the gates fall, the palace soon follows. Your attention is the gate to your mind. Every notification, every meaningless argument, every endless scroll, every unnecessary comparison is another soldier asking for permission to enter. The frightening truth is that most people do not lose their peace because life is difficult. They lose it because they never learned how to protect the entrance. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire filled with political conspiracies, betrayal, endless requests, and constant pressure. Yet he repeatedly reminded himself that the mind becomes the color of its dominant thoughts. Read those words again. The mind becomes the color of its dominant thoughts. If your attention is consumed by fear, your life slowly begins to resemble fear. If it is consumed by anger, your character begins to mirror anger. But if your attention is intentionally directed toward wisdom, discipline, and purpose, your entire life quietly starts moving in that same direction. Think of a gardener who spends years growing a beautiful garden. Every morning he waters the flowers, removes the weeds, and protects the soil. One day he becomes careless and leaves the gate open. The weeds do not destroy the garden overnight. They spread silently, day after day, week after week, until eventually the flowers disappear beneath something he never intended to grow. The human mind works exactly the same way. Every piece of content you consume, every conversation you entertain, and every thought you repeatedly revisit is either planting flowers or feeding weeds. There is no neutral ground. Tomorrow morning, before you ask yourself what you need to accomplish, ask something far more important. What deserves my attention today? Not everything that demands it deserves it. Refuse to feed distractions that make you weaker. Refuse to replay conversations that steal your peace. Refuse to compare your journey with people who are walking a completely different path. Every time you deliberately withdraw your attention from something meaningless, you are reclaiming a piece of your freedom. This is why the strongest minds appear so calm. It is not because their world is quieter. It is because they have become ruthless about what they allow to live inside their minds. They understand that attention is like sunlight. Whatever you shine it on will grow. Feed resentment, and resentment grows stronger. Feed fear, and fear spreads deeper roots. Feed discipline, courage, gratitude, and purpose. And slowly those become the strongest parts of who you are. Never forget this. The battle for your future will never begin on a battlefield. It begins with a single question repeated every morning. Who will I allow to occupy my mind today? The person who learns to guard their attention no longer becomes a prisoner of the world's noise. They become the architect of their own thoughts, the guardian of their own peace, and eventually the master of their own destiny. Principle 6. Die before you die. Every morning, whether you notice it or not, life asks you one silent question. If today were your last sunrise, would you still waste it the same way? Most people immediately look away from that question because it feels uncomfortable. They believe thinking about death steals joy from life. The Stoics discovered the exact opposite. They realized that the moment you truly accept your mortality is the moment you finally begin to live without fear. Marcus Aurelius carried this truth with him every single day. He reminded himself again and again that he could leave this world at any moment, not to become fearful, but to become awake. Because when you remember that your time is limited, something extraordinary happens. Petty arguments lose their importance. Endless scrolling loses its attraction. The approval of strangers loses its power. Suddenly, the only thing that matters is whether you are becoming the person you were born to become before time quietly runs out. Imagine an old hourglass resting on a table. Every grain of sand falls without making a sound. No warning, no announcement, no second chance. Most people stare only at the sand still waiting above, believing they have plenty left. The Stoic looks at the sand already gone, not with sadness, but with gratitude, because every grain that has fallen reminds him that the ones still remaining are infinitely precious. The value of life has never come from how much time you have. It comes from realizing that none of it is guaranteed. This is why the Stoics practiced memento mori. Remember that you must die. It was never meant to be a dark ritual. It was a wake-up call. Every sunrise was treated like a gift that might never be repeated. Every conversation could be the last. Every act of kindness could become someone's final memory of you. They understood that death is not standing at the end of life, waiting patiently. It walks beside you every single day. And strangely enough, once you stop running from that truth, it stops frightening you. Tomorrow morning, before your feet touch the ground, ask yourself one question. If I never see another sunrise after this one, what deserves my attention today? You will be amazed at how quickly your priorities change. The excuses disappear. The resentment begins to fade. The meaningless distractions lose their grip. You stop delaying the life you keep promising yourself you will live one day, because deep inside you realize one day is not a promise, it is only a possibility. There is something almost supernatural about a person who has made peace with mortality. You cannot manipulate them with status because they know it will fade. You cannot intimidate them with failure because they know failure is temporary. You cannot trap them with comfort because they understand comfort cannot stop the clock. They move with a quiet urgency, not because they are rushing through life, but because they refuse to waste what can never be replaced. Remember this truth every morning. You are not rich because of the money in your bank account. You are rich because you woke up with another sunrise that millions of people prayed for but never received. The greatest tragedy is not that one day you will die. The greatest tragedy is reaching that final day and realizing you never truly lived. So before you chase success, before you chase recognition, before you chase comfort, chase a life that would make you smile, even if today turned out to be your last. That is the freedom the Stoics found. And once you find it, nothing in this world can truly enslave your spirit again. Principle 7. Become unbreakable by losing everything in your mind first. There is a fear so deeply rooted inside every human being that most people spend their entire lives running from it without ever giving it a name. It is not the fear of failure. It is not the fear of pain. It is the fear of losing what we have become attached to. Our success, our reputation, our wealth, the people we love. Even the image we have created of ourselves. We cling to these things so tightly that we begin to mistake them for who we are. And the moment life threatens to take them away, our peace collapses with them. The Stoics trained for a very different kind of strength. They practiced something that sounds almost impossible until you understand its purpose. Before the day even began, they imagined losing everything they possessed, not because they expected tragedy, but because they wanted to destroy fear before fear had the chance to control them. They understood that the mind suffers most when reality arrives as a surprise. But when the heart has already accepted the possibility of loss, it meets hardship with remarkable calm instead of panic. Imagine standing in front of a mighty oak tree during a violent storm. Every branch bends under the force of the wind, yet the tree refuses to fall. Why? Because its roots reach far deeper than anyone can see. Now imagine another tree whose roots spread only across the surface. It looks just as strong on a sunny day, but the first powerful storm tears it from the ground. Most people build their lives like that second tree. Their roots grow into money, praise, relationships, and comfort. The Stoics planted their roots somewhere no storm could ever reach, inside their character. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself repeatedly that everything outside his own virtue could disappear without warning. His throne could be taken, his body could become weak, the people he loved could leave this world. Yet none of those losses had the power to steal the one thing that truly belonged to him, his ability to choose wisdom over fear, courage over panic, and dignity over despair. That was the kingdom no emperor, no enemy, and not even death itself could conquer. Tomorrow morning, before you begin your day, close your eyes for 1 minute and quietly ask yourself, if everything I own disappeared tomorrow, who would I still be? It is an uncomfortable question, but it reveals a powerful truth. If your answer leaves you feeling empty, then your identity has been built on things that were never meant to last. But if your answer is, I would still have my character, my discipline, my courage, and my values, then you have already discovered a kind of wealth that cannot be stolen. Here is the paradox that changes everything. The moment you stop clinging to what life can take away, you begin to appreciate it more deeply than ever before. You love people more because you know they are not guaranteed. You value your mornings because you know they are numbered. You become grateful instead of entitled. Fear slowly loses its grip because it no longer has anything to threaten. A person who has already made peace with loss cannot easily be manipulated by the promise of comfort or the threat of pain. Never forget this truth. The strongest human being is not the one who possesses the most. It is the one who can lose everything and still stand with their head held high because they never built their identity on temporary things. Build your life on character instead of possessions, on principles instead of praise, and on virtue instead of comfort. Then, no matter what life chooses to remove from your hands, it will never be able to take away the person you have become. And that is the kind of strength the Stoics called true freedom. Principle 8. Become the observer of your own mind. There is a prison that millions of people enter every single morning without ever realizing the door was never locked. The prison is not built from iron bars or concrete walls. It is built from thoughts that are believed without question. One careless comment ruins an entire day. One painful memory steals an entire morning. One moment of self-doubt convinces a person they are not good enough. The most dangerous part is that none of these thoughts ask for permission. They simply arrive, and most people immediately mistake them for the truth. Epictetus warned his students about this centuries ago. He taught that human beings are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they attach to those events. Think about how much power is hidden inside that single idea. The problem is rarely the event. The problem is the story your mind begins telling the moment the event happens. Two people can experience the exact same failure. One sees proof that life is against him. The other sees a lesson that makes him stronger. The event never changed. Only the interpretation did. And interpretation is a choice. Imagine sitting beside a river at sunrise. Thousands of leaves float past you on the surface of the water. Some are green, some are dry, some disappear almost immediately, while others remain in sight a little longer. Now imagine trying to jump into the river to catch every single leaf. You would exhaust yourself within minutes. Yet that is exactly what most people do with their thoughts. They chase every fear. They argue with every memory. They cling to every insult. They fight every emotion as though every passing thought deserves their complete attention. The Stoics chose a different path. They sat on the riverbank and simply watched the leaves drift away. Marcus Aurelius filled the pages of his journal with reminders that his mind belonged to him alone. He understood something most people never discover. A thought is only a visitor. It becomes a permanent resident the moment you invite it to stay. Anger knocks on the door. Fear knocks on the door. Jealousy knocks on the door. You cannot stop them from arriving, but you can decide whether they enter your home or continue walking down the road. That single decision is where freedom begins. Tomorrow morning, Pay attention to the very first negative thought that enters your mind. Do not argue with it. Do not obey it. Simply pause and ask yourself, is this a fact, or is it only a thought? That one question creates a small space between you and your emotions. And inside that tiny space lives something extraordinary. Your freedom to choose your response instead of reacting automatically. Most people never discover that freedom because they move too quickly. The Stoics built their entire lives upon it. Here is the difference between an ordinary mind and an extraordinary one. An ordinary mind believes everything it thinks. An extraordinary mind investigates everything it thinks. It understands that not every voice inside deserves to become a command. Some thoughts are echoes of old fears. Others are wounds that have not fully healed. Some are simply habits repeated so often they sound like truth. Wisdom begins the moment you stop asking, "What am I thinking?" and start asking, "Should I believe this thought at all?" Never forget this. Your greatest enemy has never been the world outside you. It has always been the unexamined voice within you. The day you stop becoming a prisoner of every passing thought is the day you discover a strength that no insult can shake, no failure can destroy, and no circumstance can take away. Because the person who masters their own mind no longer spends life reacting to the world. They begin creating the world that exists within them, and once that inner world becomes peaceful, the outer world loses its power to control them. Principle 9. The man who needs nothing cannot be controlled. Every empire in history has understood one truth about power. If you can control what a person desires, you can control the person. Promise them comfort, and they will obey. Threaten to take away their reputation, and they will remain silent. Offer them approval, and they will slowly become addicted to pleasing everyone except themselves. This is why most people believe they are free while living as prisoners of things they can never completely control. They do not wear chains around their wrists. They wear them around their desires. Epictetus was born a slave, yet history remembers him as one of the freest men who ever lived. Think about that for a moment. A man whose body belonged to another refused to let his mind belong to anyone. He understood that real slavery does not begin when someone controls your circumstances. It begins when they control your emotions. The day another person's opinion determines your peace, they become your master. The day comfort becomes something you cannot live without, it becomes your prison. The day praise becomes your oxygen. You stop living for truth and start performing for applause. Imagine a puppet hanging from invisible strings. Every compliment lifts its arms. Every insult drops its head. Every rejection changes its direction. Every opinion from the crowd decides its next movement. Now imagine cutting every one of those strings. The puppet falls for only a moment. Then, for the first time, it stands on its own feet. Freedom often feels uncomfortable at first because most people have forgotten what it feels like to move without someone else pulling the strings. Marcus Aurelius ruled millions of people, yet every morning he reminded himself of something astonishing. He could not control whether people admired him, betrayed him, misunderstood him, or remembered him after his death. But he could always control whether he remained just, disciplined, courageous, and wise. That single realization protected him from becoming a slave to praise or a victim of criticism. His peace no longer depended on what the crowd decided. It depended on what his character decided. Tomorrow morning, ask yourself one brutally honest question. What am I afraid of losing? Is it approval, status, comfort, money, a relationship? Now ask an even harder question. If someone knew this about me, could they use it to control me? The answer will reveal exactly where your greatest weakness still lives, because whatever you cannot bear to lose will quietly begin controlling the choices you make every day. The Stoics did not become fearless because life became easier. They became fearless because they practiced wanting less. They discovered that every unnecessary desire creates another doorway through which fear can enter. The fewer things you desperately need from the world, the fewer weapons the world has against you. This is why inner freedom is not built by collecting more. It is built by depending on less. Remember this truth for the rest of your life. The most powerful person in any room is rarely the loudest, the richest, or the most admired. It is the one who cannot be bought with comfort, frightened by criticism, or manipulated through desire. That person walks with a quiet confidence the world struggles to understand, because their peace no longer comes from anything the world can give, which also means it cannot be taken away by anything the world decides to remove. And that is the highest form of freedom the Stoics ever sought. Principle 10. Let pain become your teacher. There comes a moment in every human life when nothing works. The plans collapse. The people you trusted disappear. The doors you prayed would open remain firmly shut. In that moment, most people ask the same desperate question: why is this happening to me? The Stoics asked a completely different question: what is this trying to teach me? That single shift separates the people who are destroyed by suffering from the people who are transformed by it. Look carefully at history, and you will notice something impossible to ignore. The strongest souls were rarely shaped during seasons of comfort. They were forged in exile, heartbreak, failure, humiliation, and loss. Marcus Aurelius faced war after war, while disease swept through his empire. Epictetus spent part of his life as a slave. Seneca was stripped of his wealth and sent into exile. None of them asked life for an easier road. They allowed the road itself to become their greatest teacher. They understood a truth that modern society desperately tries to avoid. Comfort entertains you, but suffering introduces you to yourself. Imagine a sculptor standing before an enormous block of marble. To an ordinary person, every strike of the hammer looks violent. Every piece of stone that falls away looks like destruction. But the sculptor smiles because he sees something no one else can see. He knows he is not destroying the stone. He is revealing the masterpiece hidden inside it. Pain works in exactly the same way. Every disappointment chips away a little more pride. Every failure removes another illusion. Every betrayal exposes a weakness that would have remained invisible on easier days. What feels like destruction is often the beginning of your transformation. This is why the Stoics refused to waste suffering. They believed pain always arrives carrying a lesson. Ignore the lesson, and life will send the same pain again, wearing a different face. Learn the lesson, and the pain has completed its purpose. Think about your own life. How many times has the same kind of disappointment repeated itself? The same unhealthy relationship, the same fear, the same mistake. Perhaps life is not punishing you. Perhaps it is patiently teaching a lesson you have not yet been willing to learn. Tomorrow morning, before you begin your day, remember the hardest season you have ever survived. Do not remember it with bitterness. Remember it with respect. Ask yourself one question: who would I be today if that pain had never happened? The answer may surprise you. The wisdom you possess, the patience you developed, the courage you discovered. None of it was born during easy days. It was carved into your character by moments you once begged God to remove. Here is the secret that almost nobody realizes until it is too late. The pain you are trying to escape today may be preparing you for a responsibility you could not carry yesterday. Life does not strengthen you before giving you difficulty. It strengthens you through difficulty. Every challenge is quietly expanding your capacity for the future, even when you cannot yet see the reason. Never curse the fire that is refining you. Gold does not become pure without intense heat. A sword does not become unbreakable without repeated strikes. And a human soul does not become wise by living a life untouched by hardship. One day you will look back at the season you once called your greatest curse and realize it was actually the turning point that built the strongest version of you. That is why the Stoics did not merely endure pain. They welcomed it as a teacher that never lies, never flatters, and never leaves a student unchanged. Principle 11. Live as if someone is always watching, because someone is. Every morning, before you speak your first word, before you make your first decision, before anyone in the world has seen your face, your character has already begun writing today's story. Most people believe character is revealed when everyone is watching. The Stoics believed the exact opposite. Character is revealed when no one is watching at all, because what you repeatedly do in complete privacy eventually becomes the person the world meets in public. Marcus Aurelius possessed a level of power most people could never imagine. He could have lied without being questioned. He could have abused his authority without consequence. He could have lived entirely for pleasure while the world continued calling him emperor. Yet every morning he reminded himself of one simple truth. The person he could never escape was himself. Titles disappear, wealth changes hands, crowds forget your name, but you must live with your own conscience every single day of your life. The Stoics understood that a guilty mind is the heaviest prison a human being can carry. Imagine an ancient sculptor working alone inside a silent workshop. No audience, no applause, no promise that anyone will ever see the masterpiece he is creating. Yet he spends hours carving details that will remain hidden forever inside the statue. A young apprentice once asked him, "Why work so carefully where no one will ever look?" The old sculptor smiled and answered, "Because I will know." That single sentence contains more wisdom than most people discover in an entire lifetime. Excellence is not something you perform for the world. It is something you refuse to betray when the world is absent. This is why the Stoics never chased the appearance of virtue. They chased virtue itself. They knew that pretending to be disciplined is easy. Becoming disciplined in complete silence is rare. Anyone can appear calm for a few minutes. Few people remain calm when nobody would blame them for losing control. Anyone can look honest when honesty is profitable. True character appears when doing the right thing costs you something. That is the moment your soul quietly decides who you really are. Tomorrow morning, before you begin your day, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. If every thought, every habit, and every private decision I make today were projected onto a giant screen for the world to see tomorrow, would I still make the same choices? If the answer is no, then the person you are showing the world is only a mask. The Stoics had no interest in masks. They wanted the private man and the public man to become exactly the same person. Here is what most people never understand. Every lie told to others eventually becomes a lie told to yourself. Every promise you break in private quietly weakens your confidence. Every excuse repeated long enough becomes part of your identity. But the opposite is equally true. Every private victory strengthens your soul. Every unseen act of discipline builds silent confidence. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes another brick in the foundation of unshakable self-respect. And self-respect is infinitely more valuable than public admiration, because it cannot be given by the crowd, and it cannot be taken away by the crowd. Remember this every morning. The world may never witness your private battles. No one will applaud the mornings you chose discipline over comfort. No one will celebrate the temptations you quietly resisted, but your character remembers every single one of them. Day after day, choice after choice, it records the person you are becoming. In the end, your greatest achievement will never be the reputation you built in the eyes of others. It will be the ability to stand alone in complete silence, look yourself in the mirror, and know without a single doubt, this is a man who never betrayed his own soul. Principle 12. Become the person your future self is waiting to meet. There is someone following you through time. You cannot see him. You cannot hear his voice. Yet every decision you make this morning will determine whether he spends the rest of his life thanking you or trying to recover from you. He is the person you will become 5 years from now. Most people imagine their future self as a stranger who will somehow fix today's mistakes. The Stoics believed something far more uncomfortable. Your future self is not coming to save you. He is quietly being created by the choices you make before breakfast. Marcus Aurelius never wrote his reflections because he believed he had already become wise. He wrote because every sunrise was another opportunity to become slightly better than the man who had gone to sleep the night before. That is the essence of Stoicism. It is not perfection. It is continuous refinement. Every morning asks only one question. Will you repeat yesterday, or will you improve upon it? The difference may seem invisible today, but over the years it becomes the difference between two completely different lives. Imagine an architect standing before an empty piece of land. Every single morning he places only one brick, just one. Anyone walking past would laugh. You'll never build anything with one brick a day. But they return years later and discover a magnificent cathedral reaching toward the sky. They never saw the miracle because they were looking for dramatic change instead of faithful repetition. Your character is built exactly the same way. Every disciplined morning is another brick. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens the foundation. Every excuse you refuse to accept adds another wall. One day people will call you extraordinary, never realizing they are looking at thousands of ordinary mornings stacked on top of each other. This is why the Stoics measured success differently from the rest of the world. They did not ask, "How much did I achieve today?" They asked, "Did I become a little wiser, a little calmer, a little more disciplined than yesterday?" They understood that success without character is temporary, but character eventually creates a success that no failure can permanently destroy. The world celebrates outcomes. The Stoic celebrates progress, because progress is the only thing completely within his control. Tomorrow morning, before the noise of the world reaches you, close your eyes for a moment and imagine meeting yourself exactly 10 years from now. Look carefully into that person's eyes. Do they carry peace or regret, confidence or disappointment, strength or exhaustion? Then ask one final question. What decision can I make this morning that would make that future version of me smile with gratitude? Whatever answer comes into your mind first, protect it, follow it, build your day around it. And now, before this journey ends, understand the greatest lesson the Stoics spent their lives trying to teach. Life is not changed by one speech, one book, or one moment of motivation. It is changed by what you repeatedly choose when nobody is forcing you to choose wisely. Your destiny has never been hiding in the future. It has always been hiding inside your daily habits. Every sunrise hands you another blank page. Every morning asks you to write one more sentence in the story of the person you are becoming. Eventually, those sentences become chapters. Those chapters become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. So tomorrow morning, when your eyes open and the world is still silent, remember this. You are standing at the edge of two completely different lives. One will be built by excuses, comfort, distraction, and delay. The other will be built by discipline, courage, patience, and purpose. No one else will make that choice for you. No emperor, no philosopher, no teacher, only you. The sun will rise whether you change or not. Time will continue whether you grow or not. But one day, years from now, you will meet the person your mornings have created. Make sure that when that meeting finally happens, you shake his hand with pride instead of lowering your eyes with regret. Because in the end, the greatest victory was never conquering the world. It was conquering yourself. If you have listened to every principle until this moment, something has already changed inside you. Perhaps not your circumstances, not yet, but your perspective has. And every lasting transformation begins there. The Stoics never promised an easy life. They never claimed these principles would remove pain, erase failure, or protect you from loss. What they promised was something far greater, that no matter what life placed in your path, you would never have to lose yourself again. The truth is, there has never been a lack of information. You already knew that discipline matters. You already knew that comfort can become a prison. You already knew that time is precious. The problem was never knowledge. The problem was forgetting these truths every single morning. Wisdom is not knowing the right path. Wisdom is walking it again and again, especially on the days when your emotions beg you not to. Years from now, people may look at your life and call you lucky. They will see your discipline, but never the mornings you fought yourself in silence. They will admire your peace, but never the battles you won inside your own mind. They will respect your strength without realizing it was built one sunrise at a time, when nobody was watching. That is the strange thing about greatness. The world only notices the results. It almost never sees the routine that created them. So tomorrow morning, when your alarm sounds and the room is still dark, remember this moment. Remember that somewhere, another version of you will also wake up. One version will reach for comfort, excuses, and delay. The other will rise with purpose, discipline, and courage. They will both begin on the same morning, but they will not arrive at the same future. The choice between those two lives will be made long before anyone else even knows you are awake. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But after everything you have learned today, perhaps there is an even deeper truth. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your mornings. Protect them, and they will protect your future. Neglect them, and no amount of talent, intelligence, or ambition will fully compensate for what is lost. If these 12 Stoic principles spoke to something deep within you, do not let them remain words on a screen. Put one principle into practice tomorrow morning, then another the next day, then another. Because transformation is never born from inspiration alone. It is born from repetition, day after day, morning after morning, year after year. And before you leave, I want you to make one quiet promise, not to me, but to yourself. Promise that tomorrow morning you will not negotiate with the weaker version of yourself. Promise that you will stand up before your excuses do. Promise that every sunrise from this day forward will become a reminder that you have another opportunity to become the person you were always capable of being. One day, many years from now, you will wake up and realize that the life you once dreamed about has quietly become your reality, not because of one extraordinary decision, but because of thousands of ordinary mornings that you refused to waste. The world changes when the sun rises. Your life changes when you do. If this journey gave you value, write these words in the comments. I will rule my morning, because the person who rules the morning eventually rules himself, and the person who rules himself can never truly be conquered.